Barack Obama's farewell address began last night, and by now it may well be over. And you know, it made me think. A lot of times over the years, I've made fun of Obama as a sissified anti-American narcissist know-nothing whose ignorance of the way life works is matched only by the titanic arrogance of his delusional self-importance, which masks an essential weakness and lack of fortitude that makes him seem less like a powerful world leader and more like a whining, sniveling little girl who wasn't invited to her popular friend's birthday party. Sorry, my mind drifted. Back to Barack Obama. I've made fun of him a lot over the years as a gormless leftist buffoon who was being mindlessly cheered on by a group of media and academic elites who, when asked to locate their buttocks with two hands and a flashlight, quickly asked to be excused and then ran away. But now the Obama administration is coming to an end. And as we helplessly weep in gratitude, I feel it's time to soften our tone a little, time to overlook some of those all-too-human flaws that sometimes made Obama's presence feel something like a cross between a herpes sore and shingles, and instead we should take a more generous look at some of the accomplishments for which this administration will be remembered long after it's completely forgotten. You might not recall it now, except for the fact that Obama is constantly reminding you, but when the president first took office, this country was in the depths of one of the worst crises since the Great Depression. The Democrat policy of forcing banks to make home loans to people who couldn't repay them had sent our economy spiraling crapwards, and Obama saved the day by bailing out irresponsible institutions and funneling cheap money into Wall Street while saddling job creators with suffocating regulations that ensured only the wealthy would prosper while the poor became mired in dependency and the middle class virtually disappeared. Now, some of you may say, well, wait, all he did was prop up fat cats while mortgaging our children's future to debt and inflation. But speaking personally, my children have always kind of annoyed me, and if they're saddled by massive debt and inflation, I'll be gone anyway, so tough. And what about the world stage? When Obama took office, the Russian threat had been largely contained, and the Middle East was subsiding into peace after years of warfare. Let's face it, it was boring. There was nothing to talk about, and our soldiers were just sitting around playing video games, wasting their time. But happily, thanks to Obama, the world is once again completely in flames. And that means there'll be lots more of those wonderful YouTube videos of military men and women surprising their families by coming home unexpectedly from the intolerable hell of war. I love those videos. They choke me up. So really, when you think about it, Obama has done a lot to this country, and it's with grateful hearts that we say to him, farewell, and stay out. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
Hooray, hurrah, it's Mailbag Day. Whoa! Yes, that means that I will be answering all your questions, changing your life, turning everything around from the miserable situation you're in right now. And if you are a subscriber to thedailywire.com, you can send in questions as I speak, and I'll even answer those off the top of my head, which will probably ruin your life, but you know, that'll be okay too. That'll be different too. But first, we have to welcome a new sponsor. This is a good one, Blue Apron. Yeah, I know. This is LA. In LA, Blue Apron is now like blowing up like crazy. I'm going to be honest. Have you tried it? Because
yeah, we have.
I have just signed up for it. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm waiting. This is a deal where they send you a different meal every night, fresh ingredients, right? Everything you need to make the meal.
Gourmet.
It's gourmet eating. I know. I am waiting. You got to cook it, but it only takes about 30 to 40 minutes. It's only $10 a person, utterly fresh ingredients. You get a lot of variety. You get new recipes each week, and they don't even repeat over the course of a year, so you'll never have the same dish if you don't want it. It's flexible. You can customize your recipes each week based on your preferences, and Blue Apron also has several delivery options. It's guaranteed. The freshness is guaranteed, and they promise that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. And here's the other thing. if you are listening to the sound of my voice, you poor son of a, if you are listening to the sound of my voice, you can test this out for free. You can check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Andrew. That's blueapron.com/Andrew. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. Go to blueapron.com/Andrew and test it out for free. It really is everybody in LA is doing this. I know. It's terrific. All right. So much stuff is going on. It's overwhelming. We've got sex, lies, and Russian spies. Trump is giving a presser as we speak. Rex Tillerson, his pick for Secretary of State, is under the gun being questioned in the Senate as we speak. There is this huge story that broke yesterday. I mean, it's a weird story, but it's a disturbing one as well. That CNN released a story that all the news media has had, and it has been kind of going around. Everybody's heard the rumors about it, that in the briefing with Trump last week, the intelligence chiefs gave him all this, information about the Russian hacking and Russian interference. And some of them, there was 2 pages of uncorroborated reports from basically a private eye who used to be in the intelligence community, a British guy used to be in the intelligence community, who had uncorroborated Oppo research. He was being paid by the opposition to get Trump, right? And he had Oppo research that the Russians had compromising intelligence on Trump that they could use to blackmail him, and that somebody in his campaign might have been collaborating with the Russians on their attacks on Hillary Clinton. None of this has been corroborated. Nobody else was running it. CNN ran it with this breathless, as if nobody had heard about it before, instead of just exercising journalistic integrity. BuzzFeed then published the documents. Okay, so this is the thing. And just to get to the salacious stuff first, because we don't want to leave you hanging, part of it was that Trump had gone to a Russian hotel and hung out with Russian hookers who. Part of the rumor was that he had paid them to watch them urinate on each other and all this. And I personally am absolutely delighted to hear that there is some sexual perversion that the left doesn't approve of. Because, most of the time, if you're a man who thinks he's a woman sleeping with a child who says he's an animal, President Obama will issue an executive order saying you have to be allowed to sleep in the barn. But suddenly, if Donald Trump is watching a weird sex show, then that's a problem. But, again, totally unsubstantiated. Trump addresses this in his presser, and I haven't heard these clips yet, so I'm going to be hearing them with you because it's happening right now. But what did he have to say about all this?
These meetings, as you know, are confidential, classified, so I'm not allowed to talk about what went on in a meeting. But we had many witnesses in that meeting, many of them with us. And I will say again, I think it's a disgrace that information would be let out. I saw the information, I read the information outside of that meeting. It's all fake news, it's phony stuff. It didn't happen, and it was gotten by opponents of ours, as you know, because you reported it, and so did many of the other people. It was a group of opponents that got together, sick people, and they put that crap together. So I will tell you that not within the meeting, but outside of the meeting, somebody released it. It should never have been, number one, shouldn't have even entered paper, but it should never have been released. But I read what was released, and I think it's a disgrace. I think it's an absolute disgrace.
Okay, so let's address. We have to address this from several different angles. I should add, by the way, that part of this report was that a Trump advisor named Michael Cohen, I think his name was. He was a lawyer, went to Prague and met with the Russians and all this. And Cohen tweeted out his passport, which Reince Priebus says he has paged through, and he says he has never been to Prague in his life, and that should be easy. That's not the kind of lie you tell. That would be too easy to check. There are a number of ways this is extremely disturbing. Okay, one of them is we have to start with the media. I mean, the New York Times, it's only a former newspaper, the New York Times, and they wouldn't run this stuff because anybody can say anything about anyone. right? You can say anything about anyone. I can tell people that you went out and, hired hookers to do whatever. I can say anything. If you're a reporter, you have to get this stuff corroborated, and the Times has been trying to corroborate it, hasn't been able to. The CIA has tried to corroborate it, hasn't been able to. There's a question, James Comey won't answer the question of whether the FBI has looked into it or is looking into it. There was some report that they tried to get a warrant to look at some of Trump's computers. The FISA warrant was turned down, but they have gotten one guy they're looking into or something like this. This is not something that you run. I mean, think about, if you ever saw the movie All the President's Men, think about the kind of care they took. You haven't got this story. You got to get another. You got to get a named source. You haven't got it. You haven't got it. This is trash reporting. It is trash journalism. I'm not letting Trump off the hook. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But this is trash reporting. And listen to what Ben Smith, the guy who runs BuzzFeed, listen to what he says for a minute. He says, our presumption is to be they're publishing this document, right? And again, I can write a document like this about any one of you. Anybody who's listening, I can write this document about any one of you, and Ben Smith can put it on BuzzFeed, okay? And he says, our presumption is to be transparent in our journalism and to share what we have with our readers. We have always erred on the side of publishing. In this case, the document was in wide circulation at the highest levels of American government and media. It seems to lie behind a set of vague allegations from the Senate Majority Leader to the Director of the FBI and a report that intelligence agencies have delivered to the President and President-elect. As we noted in our story, there is serious reason to doubt the allegations. Publishing this document was not an easy or simple call, and people of goodwill may disagree with our choice, but it reflects how we see our job with as reporters. And basically, he went on to say that he wanted us to be able to see the documents so we could make up our own mind. And think about the absurdity of that. How are you supposed to make up your own mind? What intelligence sources do you have? This is their job. Their job is to make sure that something they're saying has weighted sources behind it. Weighty sources. They can't always tell whether it's true, but you have got to have, this is just a document of Oppo research, and it is just appalling that the anti-Trump hysteria has reached this level, that people would degrade themselves, especially at CNN, which is supposed to be the most trusted name in news, as they always called themselves. It is appalling that the press would run with a story like this and make it breathless while these hearings are going on. It is all very suspicious timing. Now let's talk about whether or not Trump is a Russian spy, as Keith Olbermann has been saying. All right, my question is, what would he do if he were a Russian spy? Would he, for instance, let the Russians get undue influence in Syria and make sure that in Iran, and make sure that the Iranians were getting uranium? So the Iranians were getting uranium. Sounds like a Danny Kaye routine. The Iranians were getting uranium to be able to make nuclear. Obama has done all that stuff. Obama has let the Russians walk all over him. So, there is this question about Trump's flattering talk about Vladimir Putin. We heard this flattering talk from George W. Bush, remember? I looked into his soul, which must have been a very, very ugly experience. We got it from Barack Obama. We're going to reset our relationships with the Russians. And now we get it from Donald Trump, who is basically saying, I want good relations with the Russians. Here he is at the presser today.
If Putin likes Donald Trump, I consider that an asset, not a liability, because we have a horrible relationship with Russia. Russia can help us fight ISIS, which, by the way, is number one tricky. If you look, this administration created ISIS by leaving at the wrong time. The void was created, ISIS was formed. If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability. Now, I don't know that I'm going to get along with Vladimir Putin. I hope I do, but there's a good chance I won't. And if I don't, do you honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? Does anybody in this room really believe that? Give me a break.
That was a pretty good response. And then President Obama himself weighed in on this, too. Because he's a lame duck. Right, okay. Now, Rex Tillerson, who was the CEO of ExxonMobil and is now under the gun in the Senate being questioned. He has done a lot of business with Russia, and they're questioning him on whether he's going to be soft with Russia. Here is Marco Rubio, a real hawk, giving it to him pretty solidly.
Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
Well, let me describe the situation in Aleppo, and perhaps that will help you reach that conclusion. In Aleppo, Mr. Putin has directed his military to conduct a devastating campaign. He's targeted schools, markets, not just assisted the Syrians in doing it. His military has targeted schools and markets and other civilian infrastructure. It's resulted in the death of thousands of civilians. This is not the first time Mr. Putin is involved in campaigns of this kind. And what's publicly in the record about what's happened in Aleppo and the Russian military, you are still not prepared to say that Vladimir Putin and his military have violated the rules of war and have conducted war crimes in Aleppo.
Now, those are very, very serious charges to make, and I would want to have much more information before reaching a conclusion. I understand there is a body of record in the public domain. I'm sure there's a body of record in the classified domain. And I think in order to deal with a serious question like this,
Mr. Tillerson, what's happened in Aleppo is in the public domain. The videos and the pictures are there.
Fully informed before advising the president.
Well, I encourage you. There is so much information out there about what's happened in Aleppo, leaving the Chechen issue aside. What happened there is clearly documented as well. There's so much information out there. It should not be hard to say that Vladimir Putin's military has conducted war crimes in Aleppo, because it is never acceptable, you would agree, for a military to specifically target civilians, which is what's happened there through the Russian military. And, I find it discouraging, your inability to cite that, which I think is globally accepted.
All right, I'm going to unpack this in just a minute. I got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube, but we got the mailbag coming up. So come over to thedailywire.com, subscribe, and you can ask questions as I speak.